Hi everybody, welcome back to A+ Maths. At school, Pythagoras' theorem is often taught using two rules. I like to teach it using one rule. Pythagoras' theorem says the square of the hypotenuse is the sum of the square of the other two sides. You may have been expected to learn that off by heart. Otherwise, you just remember that c squared equals a squared plus b squared. That's Pythagoras' theorem. Like with using any rule, the most important thing is to know what the letters stand for in the rule. In Pythagoras' theorem, the most important thing is to realize that the C stands for the hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse of a triangle is always the longest side. The A and the B stand for the other two sides, and it doesn't matter which side is A and which side is B. When we do a Pythagoras question, the first thing we need to do is to identify which side is the hypotenuse, because that's what we need to start with in our formula. Every Pythagoras question will have a right angle in one of the corners. Don't forget that a right angle is given by a little box. The hypotenuse will always be the longest side of the triangle, and it will always be the side that is opposite the right angle. That's the hypotenuse, and it is C. The other two sides are A and B, and it doesn't matter which one's which. Now let's do some examples. There are really only two types of questions that you can get. One is to find the hypotenuse, and one is to find one of the other two sides. So let's do the hypotenuse first, because it's a little bit easier. Here we have a right angled triangle. So we need to find the length of the unknown side, which is x. X in this particular triangle is the hypotenuse. We know that we need to use Pythagoras, so whenever you want to use a rule, you should always write the rule down. C in this formula is the hypotenuse. In our case, the hypotenuse is x, so that's x squared. The other two sides are 7 and 24, and it doesn't matter which one I put first, as long as the 7 and the 24 go over here on the right-hand side. Now I need to work out what 7 squared plus 24 squared is. 7 squared plus 24 squared is 625. Then to get rid of the squared, I need to square root both sides. They cancel because that was the whole point of square rooting it, to get rid of the square. And x equals, you do it on your calculator, and you should get 25. And don't forget to put the units, which is centimetres. Let's see if you can do one. I'll keep the numbers easy for you. Let's make this one meters. Press pause and have a go, and then press play when you're finished. I hope you all wrote down the rule. Never use a rule if you haven't written it down first. C is the hypotenuse, which in our case is x. So you have x squared equals 6 and 8 at the other two sides. 6 squared plus 8 squared. You do 6 squared plus 8 squared on your calculator. 6 squared plus 8 squared equals, you get 100. You have to square root both sides, and you're left with x equals the square root of 100, which is 10. And don't forget to put the meters. Did you get it? I hope so. Would you like to do one more? Here we have our right angled triangle. We know that we need to use Pythagoras, so of course we write down the rule. C squared equals a squared plus b squared. What's the first thing we need to do? Label the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is x, so that's x squared. The other two sides, 15 and 8, can go in either space. So if you've written 8 squared plus 15 squared, that's fine. It doesn't make any difference. We do them on the calculator, 8 squared plus 15 squared, or 15 squared plus 8 squared, and you should get 289. You square root both sides, and we're left with the square root of 289, which is 17 metres. The next type of questions that we can get are ones that we have to find one of the other two sides, not just the hypotenuse. So let's check that out. Over here, again, we know we need to use Pythagoras. You're going to use a rule, write the rule down. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Of course, we need to identify which one's the hypotenuse because C is the hypotenuse. So C in this case is 20 squared. The A and the B are X and 11. It doesn't matter which one I put first. I just tend to put the one that I don't know first. But it makes no difference if you write 11 squared plus X squared or X squared plus 11 squared. Now this is a normal equation and we just need to solve it. If you're not so good at solving equations, you might want to go back and have a look at one of the videos that I've done on solving equations because this bit should be easy. I can work out what 20 squared and 11 squared are. 20 squared is 400, X squared, and 11 squared, if you know your times tables, is 121. If not, then just do it on your calculator. Now this is just a normal equation. We want letters on one side and we want numbers on the other. So I need to get the X squared on its own, which means that I need to move the plus 121 to the other side. So that becomes a minus. So now I have X squared equals 400 take away 121, which is 279. Then I need to square root both sides. I'll write the X on the left because I prefer it on the left. And my answer is 16.7 metres. Don't worry if the answer's not exact. If they ask for the answer to be exact, then you would have left it as the square root of 279. But usually they'll ask you for it to 1 or 2 decimal places and then you just do whatever the question asks you to do. Let me draw a couple more of those on the board. We'll do them to make sure that you fully understand it because those ones are the tricky ones. So here are 3 more questions, 2 finding the other two side and 1 that's a little bit more tricky because we need to do 2 things. If you'd like to have a go at them on your own before I get started, there you go, you can just pause it and copy them down and then go through the answers. If you want to have a look and watch me do it first, that's great. So number 5, don't forget, write the rule first. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Now the first thing I need to do is to find the hypotenuse. In this case it's 18, so the 18 goes over here underneath the C. A and B are X and 12. I like to put the X first, but of course don't forget you can do whatever you like. If you want to put the 12 squared plus X squared, that's fine. I now like to work out what these things are. So 18 squared is 324. X squared doesn't change and 12 squared is 144. Now I just have a normal equation. I need to move the 144 to the other side. So the X squared stays there. And 324 take away 144 is 180. And then I need to square root both sides. And so X equals the square root of 180, which is 13.4 metres. And of course that's to 1 decimal place. If you wanted to do 2, you could do 2. Or generally speaking, you'll do whatever the question tells you to do. Have a look at the next one. Same thing. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Always look for the hypotenuse first. Don't get clever and just put any number in any spot. My hypotenuse is 24, X squared plus 15 squared. 24 squared is 576. X squared we leave the same. 15 squared, don't be clever and try and do it in your head if you don't know, 225. You should all be starting to get the hang of them now. So to find X squared, I need to move the 225 to the other side. So I go 576, take away 225 is 351. And of course, to get rid of the squared, I need to square root so that they cancel. And then I do the square root of 351 on my calculator. And that's 18.7. Again, I'll just do to 1 decimal place. Everybody happy with that? I hope so. Pythagoras is not nearly as difficult as what most people think it is. Let's have a look at this one. This question here, we have an x and we have a y, and we need to find the value of both. And there's 2 right-angled triangles. If you actually have a look, one of the right-angled triangles on the left has a 4, a 7 and an x. Of course, that is the hypotenuse. We can use Pythagoras in that triangle and find the value of x, just like we did over there in questions 5 and 6. If we have a look at the right side, we also have a right-angled triangle where y is the hypotenuse. But this one is different because I have x, y and 6. So if I try to use Pythagoras in this side, I have an x and a y, and that's no good to me because I only want to have an x or a y. I can't have 2 unknowns in the same equation. I can only have one letter that I don't know, which means that I need to work out the x first. So let's have a look at just this triangle over here. If it helps you, get a highlighter or a different colour and draw your triangle in a different colour. That's the triangle that we're looking at first. Our hypotenuse is 7. Let's write our rule down. 7 is the hypotenuse. That has to go under the C. The 4 and the x can go anywhere. X squared plus 4 or 4 squared plus x squared. I work these out. 7 squared is 49. X squared plus 4 squared is 16. And then I have 49 take away 16. You can use your calculator, or if you can do it in your head, that's great, 33. And of course, then I square root both sides. So x equals the square root of 33, which is 5.7 to 1 decimal place. Now I can go over to the next triangle. Remember, if it helps you to label the triangle in a different colour or to highlight it so that you can see it more easily, then you should do that. There's our new triangle. My hypotenuse, of course, I'm going to use Pythagoras, so I'm going to write down the rule. I have y squared is the hypotenuse. Now I have x and 6. But x is 5.7, isn't it? So I can write 5.7 squared plus 6 squared. Now this is a little bit tricky because this 5.7 comes from this answer, right? Now it wasn't really 5.7, was it? All of you worked it out on your calculator, hopefully. And on your calculator, well, I've got 5.744562647. So in actual fact, I should write down all the decimals. But because we don't want to have to write down all the numbers, that will take us a long time, we just write down 5.7. But on the calculator, I don't clear it. So if you cleared it by accident, just go the square root of 33 equals. Work it out again. That's the number that you need to use here. So you need to say 5.744, whatever the number is, you need to square that whole thing plus 6 squared. Don't round off in the middle of the question, and you should get exactly 69. Then you square root that, and you get 8.3 to 1 decimal place. Never round off in the middle of a question. Thanks for watching again. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe below. See you soon.